if you do a cross section of something, that gets you thinking about things in a very different way than making an overhead map. And that's very different than making a portrait of something. So how you use pictures changes the way you observe and changes the way you think. And the same is actually true of how we use words. So we sort of general categories of things that we can do with words. I'd like us to sort of think about the format of how we use words. And then we want to also think about the words themselves. How can we get our students to be more descriptive? How can we sort of use, kind of leverage developing language arts to make us better observers and thinkers? This also is opportunities for thinking about kind of incorporating things like poetry or things like that into our nature journal. So this is going to be an interesting and free-flowing discussion. If there's any little artifacts you need to run around your house and grab that you want to share, you can do that. But let's just get ourselves started by thinking about how different sort of ways that you can use words. Like what is the kind of the low-hanging fruit when everybody thinks of put words in your journal? What does everybody think of? And we'll get those down, and then we're going to get some more subtleties and nuances to give us more strategies of ways to use words. So does anybody want to get us started off with let's jump over to Katya.
Hello, nice to see everybody. It always starts with modeling, especially when you teach lower grades. You have to get the kids to like words is really where it starts. And there's wonderful books where they build on words. I think it's Peter Reynolds has a series of books. They're not about nature journaling, but they're about words. I'll see if I have one of them on my bookshelf in a moment. But if you think about like Fancy Nancy, because she wants to learn French, is always got these wonderful words. She doesn't say it was good. She says it was magnifique. It was magnificent. Charlotte's Web. Charlotte talks about greetings and salutations. That's my fancy way of saying hello. So you have to model it for the kids. You have to use great words. And just a little plug here is last Wednesday when Amanda Gorman spoke, how wonderfully she used words. And she's just a young lady, but how amazing were the words that she spoke. But you have to give that to the kids, because if you don't, a lot of where I taught, a lot of the kids did not have wealthy families. Their language was they didn't have rich vocabulary. So you have to help them with that. So starts with modeling.
Jack, I believe you're muted. We still cannot hear you. There's this weird buzz.
So if you have the weird buzzing in your house, you can hit the mute button. There you go. Thanks. So what I was really appreciating about that is that's this ground level, fundamental, essential thing. And the way you are approaching that is also kind of really playful, just in yourself, intentionally step up your vocabulary in the presence of your students. And the more that we are intentionally thinking about that, when I'm putting words in my journal, if I'm thinking about how am I modeling really, stretching, like, ooh, like here's a juicy word, and to be playful with that, just like Fancy Nancy does, to be playful with those and highlight and put some, glitter onto those those really juicy words, right? I'm gonna write down juicy words.
By the way, that thing with glitter, I had a little girl who was really not interested in learning her sight words. And so what I did is I had her parents put them on cards. I gave her a little tube of glitter glue. And when she knew the words, she got to write them, trace them in glitter. And she learned the words in a flash because that was a real motivator for her.
Oh, that is really fun. That is great. Oh, hold on, I am trying to. Okay, good. I think I've just turned off our waiting room. Or have I turned it on? I don't know. Anyway, sorry about. Yeah, I love that glitter glue thing. Yeah, and make expressive and dynamic words really fun, and be goofy and playful with it. Really, that's lovely. What else? Let's think more about our kind of our word play. And I'm going to remove my spotlight. I'm going to see anybody just sort of wave at me, Debbie. Let's jump over to Debbie and
Thanks.
Spotlight you.
Great. I just kind of wanted to piggyback on, I think her name was Kate G.
Katya.
I love having all of those opportunities for those fun, fancy words, but I wouldn't want a child or a student to get caught up with having to, while they're nature journaling, that word has to be precise at that particular moment, but basically encourage them that they can come back and get your ideas down, you know, what you see and what you're noticing and what you're excited about, but you can come back and revise and find those more perfect words, or, you know, instead of just red, what kind of red, and be able to be descriptive from there, but not have them think that they have to have that perfect word right there in that moment, because even writers and poets don't get that first word down. They work on those words on a lot of revisions and thinking. So I agree with wanting to have that fabulous language in there, but not having kids think they have to have it on the moment.
That ties directly into, you know, all the things which we say about drawing pictures, where if you're worried about having to make a pretty picture when you are drawing something, that locks you up. So the words have to be tools, and not a fetish. Right? So maybe there's a balance between being playful and sometimes celebrating and playing with words, and not making it a thing, right? To give people, like, so there's a distinction between when you are writing to think and writing to explain, right? And scientists do both of those kinds of writing. And the process of doing them is different. So what you're talking about, Debbie, is really the writing to think part of it. You don't want to be censoring yourself and thinking like, oh, I got it, and getting wrapped around the axle about that. And then when we're writing to explain things, that's where sort of other kind of aspects of the full fabric of the language kind of unrolls. So this is the think and explain. All right. Excellent. Let's keep this going. You can either use the raise hand button down in the reactions section, or just kind of wave, or just start talking, and the computer will pick you up and will spotlight you for everybody to see. Aisha, let's jump over to you. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Yes, it's hard to come. This is a sidetrack, but I have been pushing and pushing and pushing at school because we're back in person. And as of next week, somebody else is doing my lunch duty at 12 to 1. I'm just like, you got to get something during this pandemic, something.
Yeah, throw me a bone here.
Throw me a bone. Anyway, what came to mind just listening to you all for me is that I think what I would like to start a little bit with them is, and I'm K5, is pushing having fun with comparisons a bit more as I try to get them to use different senses, like Anne was reminding us. But it's like, great, soft. But as you come back to it in the moment or later, we all have different groups with different needs or abilities. Be like, okay, soft as what? Let's go further with it. Soft as your cat, soft as velvet, soft as, I don't know, you all have different experiences. And again, modeling a few. And for me, that's where I may have fun with it next time. And I'm always trying to set up, as even my modeling, as you're explaining, okay, give me some texture. Are you using your sense of touch? Is it soft? Is it rough? Giving them basic words, but then asking them to add on. So that's what came to mind for me in my notes. Thank you.
Yeah, I like what you're saying here about the add-ons. So on, like, kids will say that the leaf is green. And when you're doing a comparison, when you look at the green leaf, you say to yourself, you know what? This leaf is green. That's a great description of it. And it is, until you get it next to another leaf. And you see that, like, oh, this is a light green. This is a dark green. This is a yellow green. This is a bluish green. So once you're doing a comparison, the simplest label, you can see how that is not useful to you. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Comparison is a great way to make our words to start. I like how you put it. You said add-ons. So is it so you can do that by an it reminds me of, soft as a, and you can also do that by, describing the green. It's a light yellow green. Or a rich, saturated yellow green.
It also is making me realize as we talk to this, that in reality, we're always struggling with, differentiating for the kids who are like, I'm done. I've labeled everything, I've written and I've explained. And then those are the ones we can push with the add-ons while everybody else is still doing the original basic and needing more time for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
So for those one and done kids, this is steps to then take it further.
Yeah, we use the word extended a lot at my school, like an extension. What's the extension you can be ready to provide? Or, you're always thinking about, and that maybe everybody will eventually catch up to that extension, and that is your goal. But in the moment, it's just like in math or something, like it's always like you've got the whole range. And for some, the extension is in the drawing details. And for others, and yeah, exactly like Marsha is saying, eventually you'd say, what's your extension? I've given you all these tools. We've worked on it for months.
Yeah, I'm going to put up a visual for this because if you're writing, the leaf is green, and there's my period. This, for a lot of kids, doesn't feel editable because in order to edit it, I now have to erase and then write other sort of stuff in. So for the add-ons, one thing you can do is you can say it's dark. So I can add in these, so a dark yellow green, like what's it like? Like inside edge of cantaloupe. All right. And so I can take this green and modify it visually on the page. And it doesn't have to look like a, it does not have to look like a sentence. Right? So I can popcorn out these little add-ons, because when you are, Avea has just called this a description web. I like that, Yvette. So to create a little description web from where you start, and then you're going to add your modifiers into that. Because we don't have a word processor and we can't just put our cursor in there and blink, 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 whoop, make that bigger. This, I think, is for showing kids on your journal page. This is an effective way that you can do that. Katya, did you have? I think somebody said you found those books.
I found one of them. I found a couple of his books. Happy Dreamer is one of them. This is called Start with a Word, and it's a journal for finding your voice. And what I was saying about words is I'm not saying that kids have to use perfect words, but if you don't show them perfect words, they don't know, because then it becomes the grass is green instead of the grass is deep, rich, tropical green, or the grass is dried, you have to have some basis for them to use better words. One of the words that he has, though, one of the books he has, which I have it in Spanish someplace or other, but I can't find it, is The Word Collector. And he talks about building words. And he's just a great author for all different ages, because he really has some good points in almost all of his books, including, for the sake of art, the book The Dot, because there was a little girl who didn't think she knew how to draw, so she drew dots, and she was praised for the dots, and all of a sudden she ran with it. So I would recommend Peter Reynolds checking him out. But Word Collector, My Very Big Little Word, he's got a bunch of stuff. So
great, Peter Reynolds, thank you.
My pleasure.
So when we tell kids to write, for a lot of kids, what this means is the format is writing in a paragraph. So so you can write in a paragraph, and this is the way that we normally think we should write about stuff, right? But this paragraph is just one way of formatting your words on the paper. And if you are doing this, being willing to add in little carrots, to add little things in here and edit your work, change your mind, right? So kind of active editing tools allows you to, when you're writing in paragraph form, or if I have just a little bit more stuff that I really want to say about this, that can go right in there. And these little notes about this are really kind of an extension of that idea there. This becomes much more of an active conversation than just straight writing a paragraph. And it feels, it makes, when I get words down on the page, it is a permeable membrane, right? There's diffusion into this paragraph. I can take things out, I can add things in, instead of it just being static. So it keeps it dynamic. So teaching kids to kind of, if they are writing in paragraphs, to be willing to kind of edit and change things, I think that this is a useful approach to do. I'm also just pointing out here that drop caps are fun. And you can sometimes, if you're writing about birds, I'll draw a little bird that's now perched on top of this one here, and oop, just pooped. You know, whatever it is, you can put in a playful drop cap. And why is that useful? Just simply because it's fun. And if the kids are having fun with things, then they're going to have more fun with it. They're more relaxed. They're more creative. And so feel free to drop in a drop cap where you want to drop in a drop cap. And it also kind of blends, you know, picture into your paragraph. Makes that boundary between pictures and words just a little bit more loose. Another thing you can do as you're writing along about fish, you can actually include icons that make you happy into your sentence. Just because, again, it's fun, it's playful, and it gets us out of the box of the way that we normally think. So this is a way to write, but it's not the only way to write. So in addition to writing things out in paragraphs or amended paragraphs, what else can we do?
This just reminds me of what's his name? Mike Rhodes. I think he was in one of your sessions for like the Nature Journaling Symposium in the fall. He does sketchnoting. And this kind of reminds me of that book that he has. So I have it. And even he does everything in pen, right? So even if there is a mistake, you know, in the book, some people are saying like you cover it with like a little heart or however that is. So you kind of just incorporate that in, but adding those little pictures and stuff kind of gives like a sketch note sort of feel to it as well. And then especially with little kids, like I always tell them like don't write things in full sentences and to do it in sort of one word answers, and then I think it's easy to go back in and then re-add in those spaces. So if they are at this point because maybe they're, you know, kindergarten or grade 1 and their words and full sentences aren't that great, well they can still be journaling, but you know the single words, and then if an adult comes along afterwards or they're able to have that more time, then they can add to that single word as opposed to the leaf is green. Just be like it's green, just green with an arrow, right? Or hard, soft, like however that is. And then they're able to sort of come back in on that. And then I always say like they can use arrows to connect some of those different words together as well. So maybe it's green, maybe the rock is black and brown, but the black part is rough and the gray part is soft. So they can be using arrows to kind of go between those, especially if their writing isn't like where it needs to be in order to fully get immersed into the word part of it. You don't want to lose them in thinking that they can't do it just because their writing isn't there. So what kind of tips and tricks can we use to give a visual to them but still allow them to do the writing that's at their age level? So just a couple little things there that I've found working with the younger kids.
Oh, Billy Joe, really fun. Let's go to Amy Sides, then over to Yvette.
All right.
Billy Joe, thank you so much for that.
One of the kids that I teach, one of the favorite ways that they've interacted with words is we've done poetry together. And the one time that we've done it, I did it in a way that I learned from Melinda, who probably learned it from Jack because it's in one of his books. And it seems like really low-hanging fruit to have the structure of the poem already set up so they don't have to come up with the whole thing. And there's a structure in Jack's book about from the California Native Plant Society, opening the world through nature journaling. And really what the kids do is they make observations and they write those down. And then you just kind of plug in to this fun poem what you've observed. And I'm trying to find the right page real quick. See, Jack, Melinda, y'all know what I'm talking about. You want to jump in there?
Yeah, it's called 10 analogies. So
Yeah.
you're having the kids go through and list as many analogies. So you talk about what an analogy or a simile is and have them put it down. And it doesn't have to be analogy for younger kids. It could just be descriptions. And then using this template is super easy that Jack and Emily have put together. And when we did this on a Sunday, we had some really amazing poems come out of just everyone's observations and creativity, pulling things together. And so this is a really fun one. So anyone who thinks that they can't make a poem, this is a
And
really
it was really great because we could do it with like even first graders, and they didn't really have to have much knowledge of poetry at all. They just made some observations and stuck things in here and there, and they came up with beautiful poems. And all the parents said they had so much fun doing this.
and it's empowering too, you know, giving them a taste of, you know, what poetry is. And it doesn't have to be some fancy complicated things, although it can be, right? Poetry can be something that you take a lot of time and select specific words, and that
Absolutely.
in your journal you can do a simple one just on your own, which is really exciting.
Excellent. And so, and that's available, that book you've got is available as a free download from my website. So if you go to my store, you can download that book for free. That was the precursor to opening, it's called Opening the World to through Nature Journaling. That was the precursor to How to Teach Nature Journaling.
And
But it does have some nuggets in it that aren't in the new book.
I liked it so much that I had it printed and bound, spiral bound like Amy has, so that I can use it easier in class.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Let's jump over to, yeah, this is great. We're getting some good material here today, everybody.
So I was going to say, just adding on to the idea that you'd said a couple minutes ago, Jack, about adding things into paragraphs and whatnot, like a conversation. It made me remember this kind of fun activity that one of my high school teachers had us do, where he had two students working together talking about an art piece, but we weren't allowed to speak out loud. We had to write down what we were saying to each other so that it was a literal written conversation on the page. I wound up using that later on at work to have people keep observations about different plants inside of the same journal. So it kind of became a group nature journal. So that could be sort of fun too. If you have kids working together, then they can go back and forth with that, which can be kind of fun. The other thing I was going to say is talking about different formats. And I'm sorry, my screen is so blurry. I don't know how to fix that. Something I will sometimes do is, if I'm writing down describing words, because I think describing words can be a really great way to get started, is I'll just make myself a column of them and I'll write them down. So you probably can't read this, but it says like shredded, dull colored, mildly shining in the right light, fairly uniform, small pieces, large clumps. But to add on to something that Anne Chadwick said earlier in the chat was to use the 5 senses. And so that can be kind of a great thing to do with describing words, is that you write down, what do you see about it? Maybe the color, or maybe how it looks. Maybe it looks rough, but then it feels smooth. So then you talk about that, or the smell or whatever. Can be a fun way to help get somebody guided on the describing words. The other thing I was going to say, and I wish I had one of Fiona's pages to show how amazing she does this, is questions. I just put mine over here, just like in a thing, but Fiona has this great way of making the question marks pop out all over the pages. And that can be a really, I personally, that's what nature journaling is a lot of times about. So just remembering to like put questions for the kids, and then see how many questions you can come up with, maybe, or just, you can have so many fun ways of playing with it. Another thing, and this is kind of like, people don't have to do this, but something that sometimes helps me is to switch off between different colors. So I have my describing words in black, and I have my questions here in blue. And then I go down a little bit further and I have my ideas of follow-up in green. And then speaking of drawing out and like arrows, sometimes I'll write down, like, if I see a process that happens, I'll write down the steps that it happened, and you can number them too. But then you can write down, oh, first this happened, then this happened, and then this happened. And in this case, it was a bird sticking its beak down through some shredded black plastic, then opening up its beak sort of like calipers to spread the plastic, and then getting a worm. And so you can write that down with arrows pointing at it and stuff. Or, follow-up questions in a different color. Just some ideas listening to you all. Thank you.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun. So changing color, just, if you have different colored pencils, if you write one thing over here in this color when you're kind of in this topic, and then another color in another topic, that's going to help you visually sort your stuff on page. Fiona does something interesting. Like, let's say she's drawing bluebirds. She'll draw these little question marks into her journal next to those. And then she'll fill those in with blue paint because they relate to the bluebird. And on the same page, she's also making some notes about the columbine. Those will be in red. And so you shall end up with color-coded question marks and exclamation points and little icons that are then color-coded and synced to what she's doing. You mentioned kind of that list of things. I think of that as a bullet point list, right? So one way to remember that is you can have a full paragraph. You can also have a bullet point list. And a bullet point list, you really think in a different way when you do this.
Oh,
And all you
page over just a little bit. Sorry.
Oh,
there we go.
all right, there's a little bullet point list, right? And also what I find is if you've got a bullet point list going, if you do this, it just helps you think of the next thing, right? Because I've got a little, extra blank space there. Hold on, got too much clutter on this desk. My apologies. All right, yeah, but if you just have a little point right there, then what will happen is your brain will think of something else to do that. And then you just couldn't put in another dot. You can also be playful with your bullets. They can be dots, they can be boxes, they can be check boxes that you check off when you've done things. So kind of to-do list style. They can be, if you're looking at little duck things, they can be little pictures of ducks, right? So here's my next duck. You don't want something that's going to be too difficult for you to draw and put in though. But you can have, so bullet point lists, the way you think when you do this and you play with these words is going to be very different than if you are writing in a paragraph.
Hey, you guys, I have to go really soon because I have to teach, but I'm just laughing because I teach high school. And of course, if I said bullets, I might get some nice drawings of bullets.
Oh, you might.
And so I have to explain a little bit. And somebody earlier mentioned low-hanging fruit. So I'm just saying, a little humor, but yes, there's really some interesting semantics that can go along with that. And I have to go teach, but I was just laughing here so hard over a few things, and this is awesome and really fun. So but I do have to leave, but I actually didn't have to eat. I already ate, so I could leave my camera on today. But thank you so much, all of you. Just you all bring tears to my eyes. It's great.
Oh, isn't this a wonderfully creative, generous community? I absolutely agree with you, Marcia, and you are part of that too.
Thanks. Yep. And I didn't think you were doing this today for some reason because of the bird, and I'm in that too. So I'm bouncing back, but the time I can't do the bird, live bird for the love of birds. I can't do that in time. The times don't correspond, but then I went, well, I think there you are doing it. So then I just had to scroll farther. So anyway, many blessings. We'll see you when I do.
Okay, Marcia, thank you so much. And also just, I want to highlight for everybody, Marcia is giving us permission to put bad puns in our journals, right? So bad puns, you get extra credit for having bad puns in your nature journal. And you now have, from Marcia, permission to do that. So thank you so much, Marcia.
Bye-bye now. See you later.
Hey, Jack, I'd like to share.
Yes, please.
So just tagging on to your list, the bullet list, I like to watch birds. So I make lots of lists. So sometimes my journal pages are just, I've got some metadata on there, some impressions, and I might have a list. And then some things you could do is just, I put a box around it to set it off so it doesn't look so it's easier to read. So, boxing things that are similar ideas around the words can help it stand out a little bit more. So, and then I just made it look like old paper just for fun. I don't always do that. Another list in this journal is right here, an illustrated list. I didn't mean for it to be a list, but I was observing the birds at my bird feeder and noticing, because I was watching how they were feeding, I was noticing that these different birds crack the seeds in different ways and they eat it differently. So I was really interested in that. And so I just did quick sketches of which bird it was, which seed it was eating, and what it did with it. And this helped me understand a little bit more about the birds in my yard. And then color coding, I think this is color coding by the seed type. So these oranges were sunflowers in the shell. The yellows were the millet. One bird cracked the millet, but the other ate it whole. And then the green one is a hulled sunflower, the sunflower seeds without the shell. So it's just kind of a fun way to put little icons of the seed and a little, cartoon of the bird, and not getting hung up on making it perfect. But I wanted to just splash the color on so that when I look at the list, it's easier for me to understand what it is, because I don't have to read all the words and I just see the picture. It's like, right, that red guy did this and the yellow guy did this. So, and you don't have to know the names of the birds if you're observing. So in this way, I guess we're talking about words, but you can put little pictures on there to help the words, so you can see it better easier with your eye. And another icon that I often use with lists is, I like to list my birds, and I put a musical note if I hear the bird and a little eyeball if I see the bird. So then while I'm at my sit spot and I'm observing the birds, I can be listing the bird to satisfy, my knowing which birds are here today, and then writing down, did I hear them or did I see them, or did I hear and see them? And I put a little legend here on the side.
And I see, so you're adding colors in both. You can do that by a different colored pencil, or here you're taking watercolor and putting a little highlight on top of it. And then being playful with those iconography there. That's cool.
Yes.
Nice, nice. And it's also a way of kind of recording your soundscape. You see what is, what are you listening to? Just having a system like this where, just think about this. So here's a list. This is kind of the sidetrack into icons, but isn't it interesting how that list, so let's put that on here too. Another important thing is the list. And when you're making lists, the list is going to also change the way you think about things. And she's incorporating icons with her list. That's really cool. Sorry, I've been distracted here. My water bottle spilled all over my table while this is going on. But I think I'm back and more focused now. So we've got lists. We've got these bullet point lists. We've got paragraphs. We've got popcorning words out with arrows. We've got editing things on the fly. Just want to show you a few other little ideas that you can incorporate into how you use words. And one of them is to create titles. If you haven't made bubble letters or kind of blocks in a while, you've forgotten how much fun it is to do those. And you can be really playful with those in your your page. And the other thing that's really interesting about putting in a big title is that it makes you think on a meta level about what is going on this page. What is the big idea of this journal page? And it might be green-winged teal, right? This is just all stuff about a green-winged teal. Or maybe sometimes it's a concept. It is beaks and seeds. And so I'm going to write beaks and seeds. And then I can even draw in some little seeds, right? Or maybe the eye here is a seed. Or maybe this has a beak. Right? But I can be playful with a title, and that makes me do on a meta level think about what's going on my page. It's also a way of reviewing my content. If I have to put in a title like this, I'm sitting down and thinking about what is the big picture of what I was thinking about and observing today. And I'm putting that down on my piece of paper. Similarly, if I make subtitles, and all I'm going to do on these is just go over these with a double line, and I'm bolding this. And that allows me to once I've got a journal page full of things, I can then sit back and say, like, here's the structure of what I was seeing, what I was thinking about, what I was doing. That this is, here's my big category of information, and here are my subcategories. So titles and subtitles are another thing that you can do. And anytime you do have a word that you just do want to make bold, you can also just bold random words in the middle of what you have. Similarly, you can just put color on, but of course, light color doesn't really help that much. But you can write things in a different color. And those will also pop out. It could even just be an accent word in something else that you're doing. So this just also gives you another level of visual play with what you're doing. But there's method behind it. It's not just like titles are fun because it's fun to put a beak on the side of a T. But thinking about on a meta level about what are the major ideas that I'm thinking about here, and I drop that into my page, that's great. Sometimes at the end of a project, what I'll do is I'll go and put boxes or frames around certain parts of things and put subtitles into those. This gives you then again, you're putting a level of structure into what you're doing. Let's jump over to Anne, who's got something cool to share.
So I was going to share a couple of pages that are less and more exciting in my view. This one, yeah, it's all right. One of the fun things was writing vertically, just to mix things up, and sometimes I'll go around a whole frame and have something sticking out of the frame. And then this is kind of a list of habitat and food and so on for these birds that I observed. But more fun was adding color and thought bubbles from these cute little song sparrows.
Oh.
So to me, that just makes it pop so much more. And again, with the titles, putting in the little notes with the song sparrow, and then he's thinking. I do this, I do this, I do this. And again, with the vertical around the brains. So those are some ideas of just how to, more list ideas, but also making it a little bit more dynamic. And let's see, I marked a couple of pages. Oh, this was, you got this idea already, but this pintail, in the title, gotta put the beak on the pintail. And there was one more, if I can find it. Yeah, another, this was from your wonderful reindeer and caribou. And this guy is saying, we really do need to do conservation in that Arctic wildlife refuge. So again, using bubbles, it's kind of that whole cartooning idea, which some people do so well. And I think kids probably have fun with it. So just some ideas to share. Oh, and the one other thing that Ivea did mention was prompts to get words about all the senses, because we're doing something pretty visual. And I was actually working with my cousin on a film that he was doing, and he wanted me to help with the voiceover, the narrative. And all his words were describing the colors and the structures of the rocks. He was going through the Grand Canyon. And I said, yeah, we can see that. But what else were you feeling and hearing? And was the water cold? Was the wind blowing? What did you hear? Just other senses. So because this is such a visual medium, it's nice to incorporate the other senses as well. So, and thank you, all of you.
Oh, fun. Oh, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing also those journal pages. Aisha, I'm going to bring you in on this.
Did I unmute myself?
You hear you loud and clear.
Okay, I had an idea as we were talking that combined some of your ideas, where I thought it might be fun to, as the icon and the boxes showing what you're doing, is to maybe organize with, I can't really draw, to be perfectly honest, and my students laugh at my webs and paws and whatever, but as you're describing your textures, you have something there, and then you heard something. That's my icon I use in the field instead of a song note, since it's often like just an alarm call. That's my weird icon for an ear. But I know what it means, and that all it cares, but what they heard and what they smelled. Sort of combining a few of our ideas together is where my brain's been going with this, and then descriptive words.
Nice. So adding some little sense icons in there. I bet people would be more motivated to put sense stuff in if they got to make sense icons.
Yeah, they didn't look like paws or something.
That's fun. Mary, please join us.
So many great ideas, you guys. Thank you. I was just going to piggyback off what Anne talked about going beyond the five senses. I love using the five senses with kids. And then something came across my feed this week about the 12 senses, which the Waldorf education system uses a lot. And one of the ones that really jumped out at me was the feelings part of it. And during Wild Wonder, I think Marley Pfeiffer was the one that did the presentation on feelings in your nature journaling and prompting kids to document that as well. And as Melinda would coach me to say, I'm not very good about including feelings in my nature journaling yet. But I would love to hear if anyone else is doing anything on more than the five senses or feelings.
I'm definitely doing the feelings things connected to smell often, and having the kids not as part of a nature journaling activity, but as they smell different senses, scents in the garden, introducing them a little bit to aromatherapy in that way, and just kicking them off with, lavender is, generally meant to make us feel calm. What do you think? How does it make you feel? Okay, now try lemon verbena. Okay, now try something else and report back how you felt after that. And they've responded very strongly to that activity. But I haven't used some of the other senses, as you're right, there are so many more that are getting acknowledged. But yeah, thank you.
Mary, thanks so much for bringing that up, because I think with kids, building empathy is really important, and giving them language to share about what they're feeling about looking at this tree, or maybe a landscape was torn up, a place that they like to play was suddenly damaged by humans or nature. And having that, because I've worked with kids where we're outside and our favorite forest got bulldozed. All of the understory was bulldozed, and it was such a shock. And we got that we created that opportunity to sit down and say, yeah, what are we noticing, and what do we feel about that, and having that dialogue and discussion, and then putting that in our journal can be helpful for them to process, and to know that it's okay to feel sad about what they see, and it helps them feel more connected, to the plants and the animals that live there. Another activity that is that I've used is, one of them is like an interview with your plant or tree, and putting yourself in the shoes of that tree. What does the tree see every day? And, who uses the tree, who climbs up the tree, who benefits from the things that you provide, or who do you need help from? And then, depending on the age of the kids, you can, have them think about, what it might feel like to be a tree. That's not super scientific, but this is the heart connection, which I think is also important in developing a personal connection with nature. And when they do that and fall in love, then we know that they're going to be stewards for our planet. So I love using the journal for that space, right? A science notebook might not necessarily be some place where you're asking them to put in their feelings, or putting themselves in the shoes of the squirrel. What does it feel like, for the squirrel to be chased by dogs who are running around this park all the time? But the nature journal, I think, is a really wonderful place where we can explore that, in a little bit more depth.
Like that. Sort of on that note, it sort of reminds me of an activity that was developed by Emily Ligren, and it's described in the How to Teach Nature Journaling book. What it does, we all usually use I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of, to kind of look out and encounter a plant or some phenomenon a little bit more richly, right? So we use I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of, to kind of take in more of the external things. Her insight was that you also can take I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of, and kind of look at what's going on inside you. And then these two things together, doing this observation, questioning, and connecting with the external and with your feelings and the internal world, that is incredibly powerful material for very, very rich and insightful poetry. And so she would initially have people we observe, and then we take, I notice, I wonder, it reminds me, we take it inward. We're writing all those things down, and then out of that comes a poem. Aisha, you had something.
A real quick connection to this is, I don't know if you all know the book for younger children by Alice Walker, because there's a rose at the end of my nose smelling me, or something like that. And it's this very beautiful, poetic, illustrated book where it's just setting up that opposite. The rose is smelling me. The sidewalk is feeling my feet. Things like that. Alice Walker, yeah, something. There's a rose at the end of my nose smelling me, something like that. Just wanted to share that, put that out there. I don't seem to have it. It's on some other bookshelf.
That'd be a fun thing to look for. While I'm thinking of it, I just want to throw out one other kind of thing that you can do with your writing. And again, this is just another tool to kind of shake up your mental etch-a-sketch, right? When you are writing, sometimes print. You can also go all caps. You can also, you can write in cursive. So you can then, bold parts of that, right? So just with how you're writing and where you're writing, we've also got, different, you can do that, all caps in a different color. Sort of reminds me of like when we first got desktop publishing, like remember when like Mac came out with what was it, Mac Write, right? And everybody got Mac Write, and everybody said like, I am now I can now do layout. And so people would write things in all caps, bold, underline, shadow, outline, 50 size font. And that was a bit much, but just remember, as you're going, you can change fonts, right? You can change colors, you can change, how you're handling it. So you can play with your own typography in kind of goofy ways as well on your Nature Journal page. We don't want to give anybody the idea, though, that you have to be doing this. So you're not changing fonts, right? So there's no but realize that these are playful things in our bag of tricks. And if you are relaxed enough, then what you can do is begin to sort of put these in. But we do want to always kind of go back to remembering there's a difference between writing to think and writing to communicate. And the most important thing is we get our ideas and our connections and our questions out of our head and down on paper by whatever means necessary. And sometimes, changing going into cursive might be a part of that. These are things that I think it's good to play with. Give students everybody's got some simple object, and you can sit down and just we're going to be doing our observations about this, and so it's not an overwhelming topic, but you just want to say, like, today what we're going to do is I want to encourage you to play with some of these different modes of changing your font, of writing a paragraph and editing the paragraph, of making a bullet point list. Oh, another thing which we haven't mentioned, which we definitely need to, because we're now 1 minute over our time, so got to get this last one in. You want to check this out. You also have, as another possibility, are labels. So labels are ways of kind of extending sort of information about something. You can do labels in several different ways. The simplest is just a line. You can also do a dot line, which is a dot and a line. Oops, a dot line. There's an arrow. There are call-out boxes. And for this, first write your words and then put the box around it. Otherwise, you'll make a box that's the wrong size for what you wanted to write. And if you want to, you can even put a shadow around that call out box. Ooh, it just got next level. All right, but labels are really useful and a very unintimidating way to start to add words into your thing. Anytime you've got a drawing and you don't like, and you start to feel that kind of art pressure, like, oh, it's not looking right, then just say it is now no longer a drawing, it's a labeled diagram. And just start adding in little labels about things. And what you're going to see is that the density of information about whatever that is goes way up, and it becomes useful and interesting because of that extra density of information. And all the pressure on the drawing to have carried all the weight will evaporate. So it's my brother and I call that journal first aid. Right? You're like, oh, I don't like this drawing. Okay, it's now not a drawing, it's a labeled diagram. Drop the labels in, density of information goes up, the level of interest and excitement and thought on the page goes up, and that stress will disappear. So just also wanted to send a shout out to labels. In the book that this is the Nature Journal that I am currently playing in. These are going to be for sale on my website. They'll be with us very soon. But in this journal, I have at the back of it a bunch of different notes and ideas about things that people do. So I've got things sort of demonstrating labels, arrows, bullet points. And there's a section specifically on words and things that you can do with your words and your writing form, font suggestions that you can write down. You can do in all caps. Things can be bold. It can be a picture drawing. It can be italic. You can draw along a curved line. You can put shadows next to things. You can color in letters. You can turn them into, put a little head on the sides of the things. So just a little icon to sort of remember that there's a lot of different ways that you can play with those words. And it's not about spelling. It is not about grammar. It is not about, having a cool font. All of those things are in service of our thinking. The major reason we are using words in our journal is because our brains will think in a different way when we use words than if we use pictures, and they'll think in a different way when we use numbers. So intentionally use all of those. And if you draw and you're worried about having to make a pretty picture, it's going to lock up your drawing. If you write and you're worried about, I've got to make a cool font, or how do you make the cursive S, or how do you spell that correctly, or is that a colon or a semicolon, all right? We want to just always go back to, we're doing this to think and engage with the world. And if kind of nuances of structure or other things that you can do with those words get in the way of that, then let those other ideas go. And some point down the line, you can kind of pick back up with them up and start playing with them again. But so if they kind of cause brain freeze, just back up and let it go. But I think you will find that just like having a bunch of different ways that you can use drawings and diagrams and maps and all those sorts of things, having a repertoire of things that you could do with words as well opens up possibilities for your brain and your book. I'm going to jump over to the gallery one last time. We're about to close out this meeting, but before we do, wanted to find out if anybody else had any thoughts or key ideas.
My
I came in late because I was at the festival, the bird festival. Will this be on tape also, and how do I access it?
Yes, this has been recorded. I will probably today or tomorrow put this up online as a the full video, because this is dense. And I also want to recommend to people to save the contents of the chat, because a bunch of people drop some gems into that chat. Also want to encourage people in our meetings to share the ideas on the in the video portion as well, because the chat doesn't, for people who are watching just the video are not going to get the advantage of that. Ivea, you had another thought or idea?
Yeah, my internet kept dropping out, so I apologize if this was already said, but your Y webs have really, really helped me a lot when I'm nature journaling. So I just wanted to shout out to the Y webs as well.
So, and I'll just do a quick demonstration of what she's talking about. The Y webs. The Y web is a visual organizer for a visual kind of graphic organizer for when you have a could it be question. These are the questions that require, so a Y web. What you do is you write your question, and here is my question. And then I come up with possible explanations. And so here's possible explanation number 1, and here's possible explanation number 2. And what you do is you kind of get yourself to generate alternate hypotheses. And it kind of, it shows the visual organization of it kind of also helps you remember that these are all possible explanations for that phenomenon. And then sometimes what we also will do is we'll draw in another little arrow and just point that to a question mark. And that helps us epistemologically, because the question mark is the stand-in for, well, it could be this, 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 or just something else that I haven't thought of yet. So that's the Y web. Ivea, yes.
Thank you. I also wanted to say I posted in the chat a couple of links. One is to the Facebook group, How to Teach Nature Journaling, if you haven't already joined it, especially because we might be having some really fun discussions on there that are extensions of our meetings here. And the other one is I just created a contact list, because I know people have been asking for one for a while, that will be only for this group. So that link is also in the chat, and everybody should be able to edit it. Let me know if you can't. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, and thank you so much for doing that. Ivea is one of our, along with Melinda, our co-hosts for these events. Really appreciate the work that both of you are doing to nurture and help and support this community. So grateful to the work that you're doing. Finally, does anybody have any community-related announcements? All right. Well, friends, it is time. If you haven't done so, you better eat some lunch. And thank you all for being here, for your creativity. I also see just in the chat here, Katya also threw out another plug for putting puns into our journal pages. I just want, for people who haven't read it, she says, do we get permission for good puns? And then she adds an extra note, or is good puns an oxymoron? So anytime you, a student of yours puts a pun into their nature journal page, that means that their brain is in a relaxed, creative, associative state. You get to go home and celebrate. If you've got your students to the point where they're actually dropping puns in on your nature journaling pages, you have arrived. That is the gold standard of kind of like, how can you assess a page for like the highest order of thinking? Your students are putting puns on their nature journaling page, you've arrived. So everybody, thank you all for being here, and y'all take care.
Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.
Sarah.
Bye. Thank
all.
you.
Everybody.
Thank you.